Okay, the end of the parsha, you may be very familiar with this. Speak to the children of Israel. Tell them, make tzitzis on the corners of their garments. The rest of generations. You should put tcheles on one of the strings. Now tcheles are this blue string. Gemara says when you look at the tcheles, it's blue. It reminds you of the sea, and the sea reminds you of the sky, and the sky reminds you of the sapphire, a certain type of blue gem, and that reminds you of the Kisei HaKavod, of Hashem's throne. So when you see the tcheles, it reminds you of Hashem. You should see the tzitzis. Why do we wear tzitzis? That you should remember all the mitzvahs Hashem. That you should do them. You should not go after your heart or your eyes. Right? Eyes means, Rashi says, means nus. You see things, forbidden things, that'll entice you to do averos which are not permitted. And achrei levavchem means apikorsis, means your heart will be drawn astray to follow beliefs that are antithetical to Judaism. So when we do the tzitzis, why do we have tzitzis? We have tzitzis because they remind us that we want to serve Hashem and not to be drawn astray by other things. In order you should remember, and you should do all of my commandments. You should be holy to your God. And now this is what I want to discuss today. What does it mean to be holy? Let's talk a little bit about holiness. I am Hashem your God. I took you out of Egypt. To be for you a God. I am Hashem your God. So tzitzis, just reading the Sukkim in the Torah, tzitzis remind us, we wear tzitzis to fulfill the positive commandments and to not stray after our hearts and after our eyes.
If we wear them, I wear mine all the time.
That's awesome. That's a great mitzvah.
But if you wear them at night, I was told that it doesn't. You don't have to wear them.
I think there's a difference of opinion about that, but I still think you get a mitzvah for wearing them at night.
Yeah,
at
right.
night? Yes, unless I do too, yeah.
So here's what it says in Derech Hashem. Derech Hashem is the book I have in front of me. It was written by the Ramchal. The Ramchal, as we've discussed, was one of the preeminent Kabbalists of all time. He's written some of the most fundamental works of Jewish thought ever. He was born in 1707. He only passed away when he was like 40 years old, 38 years old, very young. He's like persecuted his entire life almost, a big part of his life. And he wrote a book called Derech Hashem, and in the end of Derech Hashem, he goes through some of the deeper meanings of the mitzvos and the spiritual reasons behind them. So I wanted to learn together what he says about tzitzis. What does Ramchal say about tzitzis? So he says, Inyan ha-tzitzis hu, ki hinei ratz ha-adon baruch hu, she-Yisrael metakin b'chol b'chinei seim b'inyan kedusha. Hashem wanted that the Jewish people should be, were to be rectified in all aspects of holiness. So Hashem gave mitzvos for all times, different times, and all situations in life, so that a person can constantly sanctify himself. People often ask, why are there so many rules in Judaism? There's so many things you have to do. You get up in the morning, you have to wash your hands, you say modani, you have to put on tzitzis, you have to put on tefillin, you have to learn Torah, you have to go to shul. When you go to the every time you go to the bathroom, you have to make a bracha. There's actually special ways you have to go to the bathroom. There's special ways that you have to get dressed in the morning. You can only eat certain types of foods. If you're traveling, you have to make a special prayer when you're traveling. There's so many things we have to do. It seems onerous. It seems like a burden. I know to you not, but some people think it's a burden. I've heard such comments before. The Ramchal here in this one line is telling us a very profound idea, that the reason Hashem did that is because Hashem wants that every aspect of our life we have a chance to come close to Him. Other religions, you go to their place of worship once a week. That's when you can try to get close to God. We don't believe in that. We believe that every second of your life, every situation you find yourself in, you can get close to God. You get up in the morning, get close to Hashem. Getting dressed, putting on your shoes even, you can get close to Hashem by putting on your shoes the right way. You go to the bathroom, you can even get close to Hashem going to the bathroom. You make a bracha after. Right? You're going on a trip, you make a bracha, you get close to Hashem. Hashem made the world, this is only for the Jewish people. It's only our schus that we have this. Hashem made the world that the Jewish people have an opportunity that every aspect of life and every different time period in life, we get close to Hashem.
I wanted to ask you, You know, when you go to the bathroom, you say the prayer before or after the bathroom.
After. Okay. V'hinei, b'chlal mal shelo adam hu hal mal bushim shehu lovish. Now, what is it? One thing that a person does is he wears clothes. Uleman gam heim yitknu b'kedusha. So how do we have holiness in relationship to what we wear? Siva shiyusha behem atzitzis. Hashem commanded us to put tzitzis on our clothes. V'az nimtzoim nitzkanim b'kodesh. So that way we can even become sanctified in what we wear. One of the most basic things that a human being does, since the sin of Adam Rishon is to wear clothes. So even in that, the way we wear clothes, well, it can make us holy, right? You can iron Fiddler on the Roof at the beginning, tradition. He mentions that.
That's a great movie, I see.
It's a great movie with a horrible message. If you look into the, if you look into the message, unfortunately, the nostalgia of the movie makes me feel very good. But then when I sit and think about what the message of the movie is very, very bad.
What's the message?
I mean, the first daughter of Box, she rejects tradition and doesn't go through the shotgun.
Right.
The second daughter marries a irreligious communist, and the third daughter marries a non-Jewish man.
Right.
And the father rejects her, and he's viewed as a radical, an insane person.
Right.
And then at the end of the movie, they make up. And they also portray tradition. Like the whole movie portrays Yiddishkeit. It's like a tradition we do. Like the Chinese have their traditions, and we have our traditions. Like it doesn't mean anything. It's just a tradition. That's not true. It's the opposite. Everything that we do in Yiddishkeit has a meaning to bring us close to Hashem. In the movie, it's just like, oh, this is tradition. It doesn't really matter. In fact, and Tevye at one point in the movie goes, how did these traditions get started? I tell you, I don't know. What do you mean? It says in the Torah. That's how you get close to Hashem. We just literally just read it, right? In the movie, he's talking about tzitzis. Why we don't read tzitzis? Why you wear tzitzis? He says he doesn't know. You just read it. Literally, it's in the Torah. And in the whole movie, Tevi is claiming he reads the Torah, right? As the good book says, Amar. And if you in the movie, when they have the rabbi teaching a Gemara class, he's teaching a very controversial Gemara, and out of the 2,711 pages of Shas, I'm sure they picked that Gemara on purpose to make the Orthodox Jews look as bad as possible. Also, the rabbi's portrayed as a bumbling idiot. So anyway, it's a movie with great songs and a great burst of nostalgia, but a horrible, horrible message. Okay, so the Inyan Amuk Mizah Nichol Od Mitzvah. He says, the Ramchal says, there's a deeper aspect to this mitzvah. A person is like a servant to God, to his master, like a slave to Hashem. This is part of what is called Kabbalas Ol Malchus Shemayim, accepting the yoke of heaven, v'hishtabed Olos Yisbarach, and to subjugate ourselves to the burden to the yoke of Hashem. V'hinei nitin ladam lios metaken es kol abriya k'mevor b'chelik aleph v'nim s'shu oived avodasos shalabayre Yisbarach v'oizik b'malachto shu hem in abriya asher bara alamatzav v'niyetzim v'man Yisbarach v'mzayyotzim v'maisei adam v'pul osav she'ipol k'fiyatorah v'nzv'shalav. So it says that a person, in order that the world is rectified, that's dependent on people serving Hashem as a servant, like they were made to do, like Hashem wants them. So that tzitzis, right, every slave used to be, when you had a slave, you would brand him. You have a sign that he's your slave. The tzitzis is a sign that we're a slave to Hashem. One time my Rishiva, he should live and be well, he's in his 90s now, but when he was a Yeshiva Bachar, probably around Arnold's age, he lived in Baltimore, he went to Yeshiva Ner Yisrael, and he was getting a ride. Back in the day, you could hitchhike, and you didn't have to worry about someone murdering you. So he hitchhiked with a non-Jewish truck driver from Baltimore to New York. Wow. And they're schmoozing, and they became friends. So he said, what is the things you're wearing on your, what are these strings that you have? He said, they're called tzitzis. He said, what do they represent? So he's told over this word. He said, it represents that we're slaves to God. And the truck driver was very inspired. He's like, wow, being a slave to God, that's a very interesting concept. And he's talking about Yiddishkeit as they're going, and this truck driver was like getting really into Judaism. And they stopped at a rest stop, Delaware, who knows, exit 2 on the Turnpike. I don't know if the Turnpike probably wasn't around yet. And the truck driver said, you're a very impressive young man. Let me buy you a sandwich. So it wasn't a kosher restaurant. He said, I'm sorry, I can't eat it. He says, you mean you can't just go into any restaurant and eat food? He says, no, it's not kosher. He's like, I don't want anything to do with this. That's usually what happens. You have this like lofty, beautiful idea of being a slave to God and how inspiring it is, but if it gets in the way of my stomach, then it's
Moment's gone.
it's gone. You're not going to do it. That's the difference between a Jew and other people. A Jew is supposed to say, yeah, it's hard work to get close to Hashem, right? It's very rewarding. It's very powerful, but it's still hard work. That means after we're done here, you can't just go into Wawa and get some pork rinds or whatever. So for some people, it's very hard. You might be surprised that some people enjoy food very much and they don't want to be told what they can allowed to eat and what they're not allowed to eat. But I want to talk a little more about that. I mentioned that once. There's three different parts of a person's soul. Three basic parts of a person's soul. Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama. The nefesh is the part of our soul that we have in common with animals. That's the desire to eat, to keep our bodies going, to reproduce, things of that nature. Then we have a ruach. It's called a ruach. That's like where our self is, our personality. That's the part of us that enjoys getting honored, right? There's a part of us that will say, oh, good job, everyone look at so-and-so, he's such a great guy. That's ruach. Or the desire for money. That's also in the ruach. And then there's another part of the soul called the neshama. That's the soul that connects to Hashem, that just wants to serve Hashem and be close to Hashem, and just wants to do mitzvahs. So during our lives, it's a battle, constant battle between these parts of the soul. Now, when we're born, what part of our soul is dominant? That's the nefesh. When we're babies, all we seek is physical comfort. We enjoy eating, we enjoy nursing from our mothers, we want to be held by our mothers, and that's all we do. We eat, and that's it. Your nefesh is what dominates the person. Now, as you get older a little bit, you have a little more of the soul coming. It says around your bar mitzvah, your neshama kicks in. That's when you have a deeper desire to connect to Hashem around your bar mitzvah. And then you have the ruach growing, right? You have the sense of self growing, and you want to be important, and want to be respected, and things like that. Now, also, when a person becomes a teenager, the nefesh gets stronger in a way, stronger desires for physical pleasures. So that's something that happens. Now, what are we supposed to do as we get older and we have these different things going on? What are we supposed to be doing? What we're supposed to be doing is really a life project, is shift that the focus of ourselves shifts from the nefesh to the neshama. Right? You have certain people that their whole life is spent on the nefesh. They're just, as they get older, right, when they were kids, they enjoyed playing with Legos, they enjoyed drinking milk, and eating baby food. And they get older, they just enjoy going on trips and going to fancy restaurants. But the focus of their lives is the neshama, that physical aspect of the soul. But really, as we get older, we're supposed to shift to the neshama. The focus of our lives is supposed to be on spirituality, on getting close to Hashem. And what we often don't realize is that the deepness and the fulfillment of life is only when we focus on the neshama, when we spend our lives focusing on that spiritual element of our soul. Why do people focus on their nefesh? Because that's the only pleasure they ever had. Right? The only pleasure they ever had is the physical desires. So when they were kids, they had physical desires and they just gave into everything because it felt good. And they do the same things when they're adults. But what they don't realize is that when you get to be an adult and you get older, there's a level of enjoyment out there that is much deeper, richer, and fulfilling. And that is seeking the enjoyment of the neshama, of being holy. And that's what holiness is. Now, the problem is that someone who hasn't experienced the kedusha, someone who hasn't experienced that level of holiness, it's very hard for them to relate to. Right? You don't have to explain to somebody. Someone once told me, and Jackie Mason said, people always say that this wine is an acquired taste. It's an acquired taste. How come nobody ever said potato chips is an acquired taste? Right? You like potato chips. People enjoy potato chips because they're good. You don't have to explain that to somebody. But it's very difficult. Someone who's never experienced that's the spiritual pleasure of getting close to Hashem. It's very hard to explain. Rav Aaron Lopiansky gave an interesting mashal of it. He said that if you tell it, let's say a toddler asks you, what's a giraffe? So you tell him it's like a horse with a long neck. See, the toddler can figure it out. Oh, he knows what a horse is, and he knows what a long neck is. But now the toddler asked, Dad, what's justice? How do you explain to a toddler what justice is? Right? You tell him it's a thing. It's this thing. He can understand. He doesn't understand what you're talking about. He has no frame of reference. So he's saying that if you never experienced getting close to Hashem and spirituality, you don't even have a frame of reference to describe it. Now, what happens is, as we live, so how do you do that? So how do you live a more spiritual life? How do you make the neshama the focus of your life? So there's two aspects. One is distancing ourselves from the physical, and doing spiritual things, doing mitzvahs and learning Torah. And that's what the tzitzis are supposed to remind us of, right? The tzitzis tell us to do mitzvahs, and also, lo sasur achrei levavchem v'achrei eichem. Don't go after your eyes, and don't go after your heart. Because if we spend our time going after the physical pleasures, and we spend our time doing things that the nefesh enjoys, eating, arayas, things like that, then that becomes the focus of our personality, and we're unable to live in that spiritual plane. Right? And what happens is the other way, that when you start living on a spiritual life, the other pleasures, the physical pleasures of the nefesh, they become silly, and you're like, the way Rav Aaron Lopiansky says is like, I was playing in the mud, like how did I even think that was enjoyable? Like what was I even doing? It's not right. People think to become more spiritual, it's like super hard. It's a challenge, but they think it's like super difficult. You have to deprive yourself of all the physical pleasures in the world. But like to people, it's just like, who are on that level, it's just like, this is not important. Like, why would I want to be involved in this? For example, right? Like when you were a kid, you loved playing in the sandbox. It was like the best thing ever, making sand castles. Now, okay, like, is that like super enjoyable for you? Or are you as excited to play in the sandbox as when you were 3?
I don't remember.
Okay, whatever it was, or playing with blocks. It's like whatever.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, whatever. That's what happens. So when a person works and he changes the focus of his life to the spiritual from the physical, he becomes looking at physical things, right? Maybe, right, you used to love running to get the cholent and the hors d'oeuvres at the wedding. Become a spiritual person, you're like, so silly, like, well, I don't even care about it anymore, right? If someone offered you, right, here's a Corvette, enjoy the Corvette, that'd be awesome. Like, would you feel bad because you lost the opportunity to play in the sandbox because you were driving a Corvette? I wouldn't, right? That's what it is. When we shift our focus to a spiritual life, the focusing of the life on the nefesh and the physicalities becomes silly. And that's the real joy in life, and the real pleasure comes from living. That's how Hashem made us, when we live for our neshamas. The other night at Rabbi Bernstein's wedding, I got there late. I probably got there like 10:45. It was packed with hundreds of people, and I was just noticing on the faces of everybody there, it was just like a joy. Like they're making Rabbi Bernstein's son happy and getting married, and they were just like happy to make someone else happy. Because these are people that, right, it was mostly his students, hundreds of students in high school, that they just learn Torah all day. They don't even have secular studies in their school. They sit and learn Torah and they serve Hashem all day. They're like on the apex of living for your neshama. And you just see in their faces, they're so happy. There's an inner contentment and joy there that I have personally in my life, I haven't seen by any other type of person. When the Kolo first came here and people walked in, something that they said was that like they're so happy. Like they thought that, well, these guys, they don't have TV and they don't do anything fun with their lives, so they should be miserable. You picture them like a monk living in a stone cell and just like meditating all day, like miserable people. But they were like the happiest people. Like it didn't make any sense to everyone. But
I remember the first call out that was off of Route 9.
Right, same.
That was the first long time.
But that's the thing. When you live for your neshama, that's what type of person you become, and that's what the tzitzis reminds us of. I just want to finish off with a letter that the Chazon Ish wrote. This is Rav Aaron Lopiansky cites also in his book. Amnam. Chalka versus Omer al Yisod Echad. Shehu hayos ha'adam avdo shel habar yizbarach. Everything, all service, everything in this world focuses on one foundational principle, that a person is a servant of Hashem. That man was entrusted to rectify the world. Second. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm reading the wrong thing, that's why I was confused. I have it here. It says like this. Yedias HaTorah aims a pshuto sheshig b'chay adam. He says, living a Torah life, knowing Torah, that's not just like a simple thing that of a superficial understanding of what life is supposed to be. Hello, Amr Shabbos, it says, Ein divrei Torah miskaimin el b'misha memes atzmo leah. Torah only exists for people that kill themselves over it. Hamisa shebekana. What does it mean you kill yourself for Torah? When it talks about death here, Hu hanatia mipshuto shel chayim. That refers to changing the focus from the simple living of life, la'omko shel chayim, to the depth of life, la'tok toko shel chayim, to the inner meaning of life. Kol she'adam marbe b'shviras hamidos, marbe chayim. The more a person spends time destroying his character traits, meaning destroying that desire for the simplicity of life. So, for example, the desire for taiva, for food, of selfishness. The more a person spends his life destroying those aspects of his personality, he increases life. Because when you destroy those aspects of your personality, the selfishness, what takes its place is a spirituality and closeness to Hashem. Because when we destroy our character traits, we are actually destroying our superficial existence, a shallowness of life. People that are selfish and they just spend their lives seeking physical pleasures, they live a very shallow life. And now that desire that we're innately born with, to just pursue physicality, that encompasses our whole being. So when we go against that, we destroy all of it. And we're really destroying our part of ourselves. And this is the life that leads to a life of Torah. There are many bad character traits out there. And they're really part of a person. When you destroy one bad character trait, in some sense you're killing yourself. And when you kill part of yourself, it's like you're killing all of yourself. And when we kill that part of ourselves, those negative attributes, that causes us to be alive in a more deeper way. The Chazon Ish is saying here that when we destroy this shallow aspect of ourselves, the selfishness, and when we fight against the desire for pleasure and for honor, that breeds a life which is more fulfilling and more deep and more closer to Hashem. And that's what the tzitzis do. The tzitzis remind us, they teach us that to remember that we should do all the mitzvos and that we are holy. Being holy means that we shift the center of our lives from that superficial physical level to the deeper spiritual level. And when we do that, we'll not only will be closer to Hashem, but we'll be happier people. We live a more fulfilling life. But it's hard work, because anything good in life is hard work. And that concludes our class for today.